Derrick Jaxn, School and Cadre. If you have not listened already to my detailed dissection and analysis of Derrick Jaxn, a very self-loving narcissist, then what are you waiting for? Go and listen. And now, having returned to this video, those of you that want to know what our sweatshirt-selling, serial-cheating narcissist is in terms of Cadre and school will now find out. Those of you that have a familiarity with my work understand that I divide narcissists into schools and cadres. The easiest way to regard that is that the schools tell you more about the behaviours and the cadres linked to preferences. That's the easiest distinction to apply with regard to them. The schools and the cadres go together, but not always. So, for example, you could have a lower, lesser victim narcissist or a lower mid-range somatic narcissist, but you won't find a lower, greater victim. Those two things don't go together. So starting with the cadres, I place people within victim, somatic, cerebral, or elite. Elite is an amalgam of somatic and cerebral. There are a whole range of comprehensive characteristics that I look for when I'm analysing an individual to determine which cadre they go in. Sometimes an individual, let's say for the sake of example, there are 40 criteria. Sometimes an individual could hit all 40 and they're absolutely nailed on with regard to that cadre. In other instances, they may have a smattering of one, a little bit of the other, but a dominant in the other one, and therefore that is the appropriate cadre. Sometimes the narcissist doesn't show any signs of a particular cadre and might not hit all 40 within one particular cadre, but certainly hits 25 or 30 of those criteria. So remember that when it comes to the cadre, if you think, the narcissist I'm with doesn't quite fit with that, well, it's not always total fit, but best fit that's applicable. With the schools, there are four main schools: lesser, mid-range, greater, and ultra. Three of those are further subdivided. So the lessers are split into lower lesser, middle lesser, upper lesser type A, upper lesser type B. Mid-range is split into lower mid-range, middle range type A, middle range type B, and upper mid-range. Greater, lower greater, middle greater, and upper greater. And there are similarities and considerable differences. And those of you, again, that are familiar with my work know that I don't like to use the term covert narcissist or vulnerable narcissist or grandiose narcissist, but rather there are covert behaviours, vulnerable behaviours, grandiose behaviours. But to describe someone as a covert narcissist is far too wide. That could cover all the mid-range narcissists and all the greater narcissists, of which there are 7 subschools. And the difference between a lower mid-range narcissist and a middle greater is huge, yet they both operate in covert ways in particular instances. So if you were to describe them as both covert narcissists, and you would look at them, you'd realise, wait a second, they're completely different to one another, yet they're both described as covert narcissists, so that's why I don't like the term. Again, within the relevant subschools, I apply a wide, extensive range of criteria to make the determination. The points that I've made are applicable, whereby a narcissist will show aspects of the lesser, but that doesn't mean that they're necessarily one. Those lesser behaviours may sit within the mid-range group, and vice versa. Some narcissists exhibit no traits of a particular school, and all their traits sit within one, and then we subdivide further within that. If you want to understand the type of narcissist that you're dealing with or have dealt with, that you have suspicions about an individual, use my narc detector. I'm objective. I look at the evidence. I'm unmoved. I'm dispassionate. If they're not a narcissist, you'll be told that, and I'll tell you why. But if they are, I'll explain to you why the individual is a narcissist the reasons for it, and I'll tell you their school and cadre, which aids your understanding, provided objectively by the expert, and also creates a foundation for your no-contact regime. People find the narc detector hugely informative and liberating, and you'll find that in the menu bar at narcsite.com in the detector section. I encourage you to use it. But let's get down to Derrick Jaxn. You've wondered, what's his cadre and what's his school? Well, let me tell you. Let's begin with his cadre. He will, of course, exhibit victim elements. He's a bit of a whiner. He sometimes caters to martyrdom. But beyond that, he's not an individual, from the information that has been presented so far, that would accord anywhere close with the victim cadre. Yes, he'll have a victim mentality, because all narcissists do, in one shape or form, but he doesn't cross the evidential threshold to be found to belong to the victim cadre, and many of the applicable criteria are missing, so we discount that. What then about cerebral? Well, he did leave school saying he knew nothing about nothing in one of his videos. He's not carrying a degree, unless it comes from the College of Knowledge, Wisconsin, and he doesn't come across as particularly well versed when he talks. He engages in word salads. A lot of what he says is gobbledygook. He doesn't strike me as someone who has a keen interest in politics or world events or current affairs. There is no highbrow interest in art or literature, crafting, sculptures, for example, music, and therefore many of the cerebral traits and others which I haven't listed are missing. So we'd exclude cerebral from the cadre. Because cerebral is not applicable in any shape or form, this means he can't be elite. So by deduction, we're left with somatic. And many of you, I suspect, will have already arrived at the conclusion that he is a somatic just by looking at him and hearing him and seeing his videos. The reason he is somatic is supported by the following. He's good looking. He's clearly body conscious. He works out, obviously utilising a gym of some description. He is clean and well groomed. His hair is neatly trimmed. He evidently takes pride in his appearance. He dresses well. Many of his pictures show him dressed in shirt and tie and suit. He is vain. He has staged photos, the way that they're lit, for example. He is a heavy user of social media. He has a clear preoccupation with money. He has expensive tastes. And he is somebody that engages in sex frequently, if not hypersexualized, and has had multiple sexual partners. He ticks many of the boxes, and potentially more should more information become available, that accord with him being a somatic narcissist. Derrick Jaxn's cadre is somatic. What about his school? There have been some suggestions that physical violence has occurred with regard to one of the victims of his infidelity. I have not seen that information in detail. Any narcissist can engage in physical violence, although some will do so more often. Physical violence tends to be a trait of the lesser narcissist. That doesn't mean that the person is one, but it is a trait. Beyond that, let us assume that that is true. Even then, this individual doesn't show huge traits of the lesser narcissist. Many of them are missing, and therefore we will exclude them from the analysis, meaning he can't be a lesser narcissist. Let's go to the other end of the spectrum. Is he an ultra? No, he can't be. What about greater then? The only aspect of the greater that he exhibits is that he has a huge fuel matrix by virtue of all of his followers. Beyond that, he doesn't show any of the indicators at all to be greater, and we exclude that. Indeed, he exhibits certain behaviours which mean he just can't be a greater. By deduction, this leaves us then with mid-range. What supports the fact that he's a mid-range narcissist? He engages in pity plays. All mid-range narcissists will do this. There is facade management. He exhibits moderate charm. There's moderate cognitive function, and I've given him the benefit of the doubt there. I was leaning towards low, but in order to establish what is established, I give him moderate cognitive function. Up until recently, he was well regarded by people. I suspect that he has steady finances based upon what he shows in terms of his lifestyle. He lives in a decent property. He exhibits false contrition. He shows a moderate threshold on his ignited fury. He operates a facade of being a helpful individual. He thinks that he's kind and considerate. He thinks that he's doing people a favour. His manipulative palette accords with that of a mid-range narcissist. I suspect that if additional information were provided about his life by those in the know, this would also support the finding that he's a mid-range narcissist, and other indicators would be lit up. But there are plenty there which support the fact that he's a mid-range narcissist. So where does he sit within the 4 subschools of mid-range? Well, given the absence of lesser behaviours, lower mid-range is not appropriate, and he doesn't operate an intermittent facade. He maintained that facade extensively in his interactions with his people, his public. You might think perhaps upper mid-range. There's some charm there. Yes, he has a huge fuel matrix. There's a certain arrogance about him. He's certainly grandiose and engages in showmanship, and also embarks upon monologues. He thinks he's a legend in his own lunchtime. However, he isn't polished enough for upper mid-range. His cognitive function wouldn't accord with being mid-range either. And instead, what we are looking at is he isn't the excessively haughty, facade of superiority, very driven individual that is polished and especially smooth. His behaviours have exhibited that. His response to what has occurred isn't that of an upper mid-range narcissist. So we exclude that. This brings us down to middle mid-range, A and B. B is the crybaby, and although he has used pity plays, they're not extensive. We haven't seen the waterworks. He's not a habitual complainant, suggesting that the world is against him, and therefore we exclude middle range type B. What we're left with is middle range type A. He thinks he's a good person. He thinks, for instance, by virtue of his godliness, that this makes him a good person. He operates an extensive facade. He thinks that he's kind and considerate and helps people, and he just thinks that he's made a mistake and that he can set this mistake right. And he believes that he's doing that with the control that he's asserting over his victim, intimate partner, primary source, his wife. Accordingly, the outcome for Derrick Jaxn is this. He is a mid-range type A, somatic narcissist. If you want to understand more about that type of narcissist, go to my knowledge vault and obtain H.G. Maull's The Middle Range Type A and H.G. Maull's The Somatic Narcissist Part 1 and 2. Not only will you find it hugely informative, you'll find it vastly entertaining at the same time. Indulge yourself this weekend with that material. And as mentioned, if you want to understand which type of narcissist that you've been dealing with, don't leave it to chance and misinterpretation, and bias as a consequence of your closeness to the narcissist and the impact of emotional thinking. Use my services. Harness the power of the ultra through the narc detector. I'm H.G. Tudor. Thank you for listening.